In this episode of Sasquatch Theory, I sit down with Denise from Arkansas, a woman who's experienced years of terrifying and mysterious encounters across multiple states. From being screamed at by Sasquatch in Ohio to being followed out of the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, Denise has felt the presence of something watching her wherever she goes. In Arkansas, she witnessed a Sasquatch creature hiding behind a tree, and another time she came face to face with a Sasquatch on the back of her property. Her dogs were terrified, and she believes the creatures were using infrasound and strange mechanical mimicry. She describes these creatures even being able to copy the sound of a chainsaw. Tonight, Denise opens up about her chilling encounters, the strange sounds echoing through her property, and the time she saw a beautiful white Bigfoot unlike anything else she's ever seen before. This is one you don't want to miss because these encounters suggest something intelligent is living in the woods. If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please like the podcast, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to comment down below. If you have a Bigfoot encounter you would like to share with me here on the channel, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys want to help support the channel, you can purchase some merchandise down below, and you can even leave a donation through the PayPal donate and the thanks button. With all that being said, let's dive into Denise's Bigfoot encounters from the state of Arkansas. Denise, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Wonderful.
Good. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Denise, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Okay, well, I grew up on the East Coast, but my early childhood, we used to go to spend every summer in northern Maine. And we lost that when I was 7, but I always had the desire to live in the woods. So my mother had passed away and I sold her house, and then I had the money to make the move, and I'm here in the Ozarks now. So that's why I'm in the woods.
Okay. What made you want to come to the Ozarks?
Cheap land. I had been, looking around to see where I might want to live. I knew I was going to leave New Jersey. It's too crowded, too expensive. And somebody called me up one day, and that's all she said was Ozarks, and it clicked. So I put my dog at the time in a kennel, and I flew out here, and I spent a whole week looking at properties, and then I found the one I'm at, and I'm happy here. I've been living out here for 26 years now.
That's amazing.
So,
okay. If you would, tell me about the first experience that you've ever had and kind of put me in your shoes and describe everything in full detail.
All right. When I was 11, me and my sister, she was 12, we went to Ohio to spend the summer with some family friends. And it was a real rural part of Ohio, and we had a creek to play in, and there was a long road we could walk down, and we just, spent our days walking the road unless it was raining. There was a big, huge dairy farm on the other side of the creek, and there was 4 of us girls around the same age. And I remember we were standing in a circle looking at something. Somebody might have caught a toad or something. And something screamed from across the creek. There was a wide swath of brush, and then the creek, and then the other side was the dairy farm. And the creek was all tree lined. And this thing screamed, and we all went quiet. Nobody said anything. So then I was like, what was that? And they're like, a cow. And then they would not talk about it. Now, there's cows all over where I live now. And what I heard was not a cow. I'm pretty sure it was a Bigfoot that screamed. And now I know that that part of Ohio is a hot spot for for Bigfoot. They call it what, the grass man?
Yeah, I believe so.
And I can still hear that scream in my head, but I am not a mimic. Um, and it was definitely not a cow.
Yeah, it's absolutely impossible to reproduce what these things sound like when they scream. A lot of people say, oh, that was just a fox, a bobcat, a mountain lion, or an owl screeching. But no, they don't understand what it's like to hear a Sasquatch creature scream in real life.
Well, I'm pretty positive it was because I know all those animal screams now, and no, it was not a known animal. It was nothing anybody would have heard in a zoo.
Yeah. And the fact that it
So,
did it by the creek bottom, that kind of lines up with my experiences where I've been screamed at by the river or down by the creek here where I later on had my encounter sightings. So, yeah, I believe you.
now I had another scream after I moved here, but I'm not ready to get to that yet. Um, I was in my 20s still in New Jersey, and we were out joyriding. And we were ended up in the Pine Barrens. And the driver saw a dirt road, and I kept telling him, bad idea, let's not go down here. And he wouldn't listen. And later we found out that even the police in that area don't know where those roads go to. So we went in about, it was dark, but there was a full moon, thankfully. We went about 3 miles because the tow truck driver clocked the miles. That's how I know it. And he got the car stuck in sand. And there was nothing we could do. And we had to walk out. There was 3 of us. And the other 2 wouldn't stop talking. And I'm walking along and I hear something on one side of the road, and it was kept staying with us. And then I heard it on the other side of the road. And so I don't know if there was more than one, but the whole walk, it was with us and it was following us. And then when we were close to the main road, I was looking at the 2 people and their faces just shocked, and then they started running. And they would not tell me, what did you see? I mean, I would ask them, what did you see? And they wouldn't tell me. But recently I found one of them and got in touch with him. And when I asked him this time, he said, oh, I saw the Jersey Devil. But he won't give me any details of what it looks like. But that's all he said. He's positive that he saw the Jersey Devil. But the way it was shadowing us, I'm pretty sure it was a Bigfoot. Oh, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. So the creature was paralleling you guys out of the forest. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I heard it mainly on one side of the road, but then every now and then I would hear it on the other side. It sounded like when you're walking and you're wearing corduroy jeans, that swish noise. And there was something out there, and it was following us. And I don't know what the 2 people saw, but they saw something that scared them. Later, when the tow truck came, they refused to go in there, even though the car belonged to the driver, the guy. And I was the one who had to go in with the tow truck driver. And he had to come all the way from Atlantic City. And he wouldn't come until daylight. So that was my Pine Barren experience.
Oh, wow. And what do you feel like its intentions were? Why do you think it was following you guys?
Just to keep an eye on us to see what we were doing. It never threatened us or anything. Nothing ever threw anything at us. It wasn't trying to scare us away. It was just watching us and following us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, either they were keeping an eye on you, and then, I mean, even some people say they feel like they were being hunted. So either way, they're kind of stalking you in a way.
I didn't feel hunted or anything.
You were just in its territory and it was checking you guys out, more or less.
Yeah. Yes. And even now, when I'm out and about in the woods, um, I don't feel threatened, and I actually feel kind of safe that they're around. If they're anywhere nearby and I encounter a bear or a mountain lion, um, it's nice to know that they're out there and they could step in and intervene. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what else happened after this experience and what unfolded?
Well, the pine barrens, that was it.
Okay.
So then I always believed in Bigfoot, but I thought that they were a West Coast thing. Now I know that they're all over the United States. So when I moved here to the Ozarks, I had already believed in them. I was out here on the property before I moved to it. I had a rented house in town, and I saw a grayish-black shoulder disappear behind a cedar tree. And I'm like, it was too high off the ground to be a razorback or a bear, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I wasn't brave enough to walk over to it. I just got into my vehicle and left. I'm pretty sure now that I was being watched and it was a Bigfoot.
What time of
And
year
I
did
had
that encounter happen?
I don't remember.
Was it summer or
Um,
winter time?
it could have been either or. I moved here in September, and then the following year in October, I moved to the property. So somewhere in between there.
Okay.
And I had a big sheepdog at the time. And sometimes I'd bring him out here and I'd walk him on a leash. And sometimes he'd get weak in the legs and he'd like fall down. And at that point, didn't know what was wrong with him. I'd lift him up and help him back to the vehicle, and we'd just leave. So when I first moved out here, I did not have a house, and I was living in a garden shed. And to get to my house on the main dirt road, there's a real steep hill, and towards the bottom there's a hump. So I'm coming home one night. It's very dark out, but I could see barely at the bottom of the hill there was something big and dark, and it looked like it was walking back and forth or walking in circles. But as I got down the hill, then the hump receded. The thing just got taller, because at the top of the hill you can't see the bottom of the road until you get close enough to the hump, and then the road reveals itself. And by the time I was halfway down the hill, I realized this thing is 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide. It's huge. And I'm like telling myself, that's a Bigfoot. There's a Bigfoot there. But it didn't leave the road right away. It like wanted to wait for me. I think it wanted me to see it. And then I was about 10 feet from it. I couldn't see any facial features or anything, but I could see the shape. And then it walked off, and the undergrowth was like real thick where it left the road, and it went between me and the road sign. So it blotted out the road sign from the headlights. And I could see it had a cone-shaped head, and I knew that it was a Bigfoot. And then right past that is where I turned to come on my road. And I wasn't scared. I was delighted. I'm like, yes, I got to see a Bigfoot. And I knew about Folk, Arkansas, but I didn't realize we had them here. Now I know we do. And then I turned in my road and I went home. And if I had known then what I knew now, I would have been terrified. I have no clue if it got onto the road and followed me home, or it's so quiet here that you could hear vehicles in the distance and it would have heard where I went and stopped. Now, 2 nights later, I was in my garden shed with my big dog, And I had another dog who wouldn't come inside, so he slept outside. And something screamed at me. And I found this scream on the TV, and you could tell it was angry at me for being here. And I knew it was a Bigfoot. I've found other screams like this. There was nothing else it could have been. And my sheepdog whimpered. He was like standing next to me, and then he just fainted. He fell over. And sheepdogs are not supposed to be afraid of anything.
Yeah, that's frightening. So it made your dog pass out?
Yeah, my dog fainted.
Oh, wow. I've heard of them doing that, where they'll just play dead, or they'll faint when a Sasquatch is nearby.
Well, so now I know those times when I was walking him, when he got weak and fell over, didn't quite completely pass out, but I know why he was doing that. He was never afraid of the bears and mountain lions. He would gladly bark and chase them. But whatever this was that was affecting him, and he may have been getting hit with the infrared too.
Yeah, the infrasound.
Which I've heard. Yeah, I have never experienced that, but my dog might have been feeling it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you described that possibly he got hit by infrasound, and I feel like animals would be more susceptible to this type of phenomenon. I guess other animals, other predators can do it as well, so I feel like it's designed to take animals down.
I did not have the internet for a long, long time out here. I didn't have the internet. So I would have to walk up on the road, and I could get a cell signal there. And I would hear the owls out in the woods, and it'd be like a whole group of owls. And one day there was even a coyote with them. It made one call. I doubt it was a coyote. And then I also heard these owls behind the house, deep in the woods, and it'd be like a bunch of different owls. And I'm like, owls don't hang out with each other. This is wrong. And I highly suspected it was Bigfoot. So whenever I went out on the road, I would whoop and do tree knocks. And sometimes my tree knocks would get answered. I'd have one in one direction and one in the other. And they were out there every day. Every time I was on this road, I would hear them. And it didn't scare me. As long as they were out there in the woods, they were fine. I think they were calling just to inform everybody, hey, here she is. And I never felt threatened. Now, there was a cedar tree just off the road that the top had been ripped off, and it was lying on the ground. And that's where I would walk to make my phone calls. And I was looking at this tree every day. I was thinking, since it was dead, I was thinking about knocking it out of the ground and using it for a fence post. One day I went out there, and overnight something had removed all the bark from it, and it was still shiny. It had just happened. So I went over to it and walked around it, and there was no bark on the ground. Something had completely took all the bark off of it. I don't know what that means, but so then they did some logging, and the logging noises came from the same direction as where I was hearing them call all the time. So they moved. And I think I've heard them once or twice since then visiting there. And I know if I could walk in that direction, there's going to be stick structures or something, because they were there for over a year that I know of, but they're not there now. And then when I saw that big one on the road, I convinced myself, and it screamed at me, I convinced myself that they were just passing through, they were migrating. And I put it out of my mind for several years. But then I got the job where there was a lot of downtime and I could use the computer. And that's when I started seriously investigating it. And then I met somebody in the neighborhood who was a squatcher, and we would get together and talk. Now, whenever I've had the chance to go hiking out here and explore, I used to walk by myself a lot, but now I don't. But whenever I would have somebody to hike with, I would tell them we have to go in this direction. And they'd be like, no, we're going this way. And they'd go the opposite way. And I don't like to hike by myself now. So I heard I had 2 dogs with me. My big dog now is 9 years old. And this is when he was a puppy. Behind my house in the woods, a chainsaw started up, paused, and then made one cut. But it wasn't a chainsaw. It was an animal imitating a chainsaw. And both my dogs were synchronized. They walked towards the sound. They let out a soft woof, and then they both just sat and stared in that direction. And there was no way somebody was out there with a chainsaw.
Yeah, I've heard of them like mimicking mechanical sounds, whether it's like a motorcycle, a chainsaw, I don't know, like banging doors, like metal doors. And yeah, I mean, I feel like they're similar to like a parrot. Like a parrot can mimic any sound that it hears. It doesn't matter if it like hears SpongeBob on the TV or whatever it may be, a baby crying, a parrot can do that. And I feel like the Sasquatch can do that very well.
The Sierra sounds sound to me like when people out there have campfires and they don't even know they're being watched. They're sitting on the perimeter out of light from the fire and listening. And that's what the Sierra sounds sound to me, like them mimicking campers or something.
Yeah, that's a good theory, and it very well could be.
And then I have an older pair of neighbors. They're like in their 90s. The guy had a wood shop and he'd close up for the day and head to the house, but then he'd hear his power tools in the woods. And they both of them know, they've never seen it, but they know what it is. And then my bed, at the foot of my bed, I have a window, and in the summer I keep it open. And there's a field next to me. And there was one night a crow called, and it was a really bad imitation of a crow. I jumped up, my dog jumped up. Now, my dog likes to stick his head out the window and bark at stuff. But he jumped up and he froze, and he was like a foot from the window, and he would not go near it. And we just both sat there like that for a long time, but didn't hear anything. My dog will bark if a human comes close to my yard, but he would not bark that night. And crows don't call at night.
Yeah, for sure.
I did have crows nesting out here once. And one night they started screaming, but they quickly settled down. And I know that a predator was trying to get to their nest, and I know what that was about. And it was up in the air in the tree where I knew the nest was. But this crow calls that I heard were ground level, and I know it was not a crow.
Yeah, that's interesting that it was ground level. And I've heard a crow go off at night, and that's when the Sasquatch were here. And I mentioned it, and somebody said that when a predator is moving through the area, a crow will squawk at nighttime. So, yeah, that's scary.
So over the years, I hear things like off in the distance there was coyotes howling, and then something close to them screamed, but it wasn't a coyote. It screamed, and then everything went quiet. Now, my dog was standing next to me, and I put my hand on his head. And I told him, hush. And he did hush, and we just both stood there listening, but there was nothing else. Normally, Bowie would just go nuts and bark at the coyotes. But when the thing screamed, he was like, nope, not getting involved. And then there's been other things. I once went camping south of Fayetteville in the winter, and we had an ice storm. And I've got a real good footprint from that I could send you. But I didn't get to see it, but I did get to hear it moving in the woods. The homeowner there was having problems, and that's why we went there to camp. She's moved out of there now, but looking at maps and looking around the land, she's on a really steep edge of a deep ravine, and it's heavily wooded. It's not suitable for walking, hiking, camping, hunting, and that's why she had Bigfoots there, because it was perfect habitat for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
They seem to like steep terrain. What kind of issues was she having on the property?
seeing footprints all around her house. She'd look up and she'd get a glimpse of something ducking behind a shed. She was driving one day and she saw one cross the road. And when she saw it, then she realized what was going on at her house, because she wasn't a Bigfoot person. And up until she saw it and realized what it was, she had no clue what she was dealing with. Oh. And then 3 days after we went there to camp, something in the woods threw an antique salt shaker at her.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like classic Bigfoot activity. And it blows my mind how close they will get to people's houses. I've heard that a lot, where they'll hide behind a shed or a garage. They're looking through the windows. People find tracks outside their house. And yeah, I mean, people start becoming fearful and they don't know what to do.
Well, in most cases, they don't have to be afraid. They're just curious, coming to check them out. I had put a marble on the road, and it was there for the longest time. And then one day, the marble's gone, and there was just a huge pile of moss. So they took my marble and they gave me a pile of moss. Now, I'm not willing to leave food out for them because we have a lot of bears here. I've left seashells. My Bigfoots do not like seashells. They've never taken one. So I've only gifted with them the one time.
Yeah, it's probably
Okay.
safer to leave items rather than food, because even if it is Bigfoot, I've heard cases where once you stop feeding them, they get upset, which I don't know. I've never had any issues with not feeding or leaving like peanut butter or, snacks, things like that.
So I'm not trading with them right now. I did put in a new garden this year, but it's not doing good. I'm trying to grow watermelons and cantaloupes. And I would willingly share with them, but this new garden is just not doing good right now. We've had very bad weather here. Now, there was one time I looked out the window and there was a small brown shape running down the driveway on four legs, but it was holding one paw in the air, so it wasn't running like a way the bear is. I've seen so many bears running away from me, and this thing was not running like a bear. And it went behind there was a building out here, but it's been taken apart and it's completely gone. So it ran behind that. And from my windows, I can see both sides of it. It never came out. It never reappeared. And finally, I got the nerve to go up there, and there was no trace of it. So I have no clue what it was. I doubt it was a bear, because a bear wouldn't have been hiding like that. And then what else? 4th of July one year in the woods, there was a puppy crying. So I walked up there in the dark with Bowie, and as soon as we got close, it stopped crying. And then Bowie would not acknowledge it at all. And I came back to the house and started crying again. It was very late at night, and I'm sorry I didn't call my neighbor and let him know about it. I didn't have a strong enough flashlight to really investigate it, so I don't know what it was. But I did walk out there several times, and there was no noise. But then as soon as I got back to the house, it would start up again. And I have no clue what it was.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard of cryptids mimicking like animals, and they'll cry out and cause you to go out there and look for them. And I've even heard of cases where they'll cry like babies out in the woods. So maybe it was a good choice not to go out there to investigate.
Well, I got as close as I could, but still stayed on the road. And I had my dog with me, the big yellow dog. His name is Bowie. Um, But if it was a real puppy, he would have reacted. He would have been like, "Oh, puppy, I want to play with it." He loves to play with other dogs. So, that just didn't, the way he acted just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Now there's a creek near my house. I was coming home one night and I was wearing shoes that were rubber. And that's all I wanted to do was soak my feet in the creek. So I parked and got out of the truck, and it was summer, so there was just all green next to me. You couldn't see through. And then the other side of the creek, there's a hill, and a big, heavy 2-footer came running down the hill. And you're in the woods enough to know the difference between 2 and 4 feet. I'm sure you know what a deer sounds like when it runs. So it came running down, and then there's a big flat stretch. It ran across that, and then splash, it jumped into the creek. And at that point, I didn't want to get involved. I hopped into the truck, started it up, and by the time I got to the creek, you still see the water rings. So I didn't get to see what that was. All right. I'm ready now to get to the good part. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Recently, I found something. It came across Facebook, so I looked for it on YouTube on the TV. The guy had, I guess he had a GoPro on, and he heard something in the woods, and he's walking with a flashlight, and he walked up to a white Bigfoot. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that before where it like he gets it in frame and then it like shoots out of the camera view really quick. Is that the one?
Yes, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just recently came across it, but back in October, now Bowie, I can't let him run loose. He likes to go and visit, and I don't need him. He likes to play, and he will find the horses and play with them, and the people who raise the horses don't need a random dog chasing their horses. So Bowie is not allowed to run loose. But we go for several walks a day, and sometimes he's out in the yard on a run, but most of the time he's in the house with me, and he sleeps inside. Now, my little dog, she's a Chorky. She absolutely refuses to wear a collar or wear a harness, so she just runs free. And sometimes she'll run off into the woods, and that makes me mad because she blends in. Now, when I walk up my driveway, there's an easement that goes to a large field next to me, and these people keep it mowed really short. It's clean. And I'm always looking down it, looking into the field because it's a good place to see deer passing through or anything else. So we walk into the woods and we take our walk and then we come back. I never pass that easement without looking into it. So we were on our way back and I glanced, and on the far end, there's a big pile of bright white. And I'm like, that's not supposed to be there. There's no wind that day. And I'm trying to come up with scenarios. Oh, the wind blew in a white plastic garbage bag. No, there was no wind. So I'm looking at it, and then I decided, I'm going to look at that. So my little dog Ellie starts running up the easement. I took just like 2 steps towards it, and it started to move. And it was real fluid like if it was a big piece of garbage and the wind caught it and was lifting it up. But there was no wind. And it stood up, and its side was to me, but its head was turned, and I could see its face. It had black around the eyes, and the eyes were round, and it had black for the lips. The one on TV had white lips, and its eyes were narrowed, like it was angry. This one, no, the eyes stayed round. And it stood up, and it looked at me, and I'm just standing there. Oh, Ellie, as soon as it started standing up, Ellie turned and came running back to me. And Bowie just stood there with his head lowered. Bowie's the type of dog that when we're walking, he's sniffing everything, he's bouncing around, his tail is wagging. He doesn't just stand there, but that's what he was doing. And I stood there for at least a minute, and we were looking at each other. And there's no doubt in my mind what it was. And what I needed to do was just pick up the little dog to hold her, and then wave and call out to it and say, hello, friend, give a whoop, just to see what it would have done. I didn't feel like I was in danger, but I was freaked out. Even though I had seen them before, I was still freaked out because it was standing there looking at me. But I was worried about my dogs. So I decided I have to get the dogs to the house. So when I turned, it turned the other way and went off into the scrub. And then I stayed in this house the rest of the day, freaked out. But I never felt threatened or anything.
Wow.
How
long did this encounter last?
At least a minute. I mean, it was a long time. I just stood there, immobilized, couldn't move. My brain was trying to figure out, okay, what could this be? But it looked like the Bumble from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Oh, and it was bright white, and it was clean, and it was beautiful. That's what I came away with. This thing is beautiful.
Wow. That reminds me of the juvenile Sasquatch that I'd seen, and a lot of the features that you described were similar. This one was jet black, but it had a beautiful coat of fur on it, and it had big, round, wide eyes. Like you could see the black pupils in the center. What do the eyes look like on this creature? I know you said they were round.
It was too far away, but it was on the other end of a very clean field with no obstructions. It was out in the open on the edge of the far side of the field. So I didn't really get to see the eyes up close, just the black and the lips. And the lips were black. The one on TV, the lips were white. No, mine had black lips. They're not albinos, though, because it wouldn't have had the black on it if it was.
Yeah. Did it have a conical shaped head?
Yes.
Okay. And about how tall do you estimate this Sasquatch creature to be?
I want to say between 6 to 8 feet. I almost sent my neighbor down there just to stand down there for perspective, but I didn't. Oh, because when he was here at the far end of the field, there was a pile of yellow. It looked like that, that sage grass that grows all over.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a pile of that. And there was 3 of us, my 2 neighbors and me. My dogs were in the house. And I just kept I was pointing out the area where I had seen the white one. And that's why we were standing there. And I kept telling them that shouldn't be there. We tried taking a few steps. It did not move. I have never heard of a blonde Bigfoot. Um, I think maybe they were picking the grass to make a nest somewhere, and they put it down when they realized we were in the area. That's what I think, because later in the day when I walked by there, it was gone. So
Wow.
now I haven't even told you the best part. The next day, so I knew that they were out there in the woods, and I had no problems whooping, whoop, and um, and they would answer me with their owl calls, and I was like, "Hello, yeah, it's just me." So the next day, I'm like, "All right, so it was here, but it's gone." And I took the dogs for a walk, and as soon as we got to where the road goes through the forest, on both sides, four of them called out to me. There was a whoop, a whoa, and two owl calls from both sides of the road, two each on each side. And they were close. I would say they were within 50 feet, and they were calling out to me. And it was my chance to interact with them. I couldn't see anything in either direction. The ground, I'm on a ridge, so the ground slopes down away from the road, and it's very heavily forested, and it hasn't been cleaned since I've lived here. But there was four of them, and they called out to me, and I was scared, and I'm like, nope. I just turned and went back to the house. But they were trying to interact with me. Oh, I didn't feel threatened or anything. It's just that I just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, you're still coming down on the adrenaline from the encounter before that.
And then about 2 days later, I was walking. I went to the west of my property and was walking, and I heard the owl calls in the woods there. So I called the guy who lives, he's a mile on the other side, or maybe 3/4 of a mile. And that's when I told him what I had seen. And I'm like, they're in the woods now between me and you. And then after that, there's been nothing. And then my neighbor had come out here. It was about 2 weeks ago, maybe. And he asked me, has there been any activity? And I'm like, nope, nothing since then. And then that afternoon, when I was walking behind the house, the encounters took place in the woods in front of the house, but I've got a nice path behind the house. And that was when I heard the owl call. So I let out a whoop and I said, hello. And that's when it went, hoo, 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 hoo. And it was not an owl call. Perfect voice of an owl, but not the owl call. And that's the last time they were here. So there's a creek at the bottom of the ridge. And so they're going there, and there's also a power cut. So they're going back and forth on the east side of my property. And I think that when we get heavy rains, they move to higher grounds. That's the pattern I've noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like they're following the creeks, the waterways, the power line strips, and you mentioned off air that you live by a wilderness area or a national forest. We don't have to say exactly where it is, but it just sounds like the perfect area for these creatures to be at.
Now I can hear a vehicle, and nope, it's up in the air. There's a helicopter passing overhead.
Okay. So the vocalizations, was that the last thing that you've experienced on this property?
Yeah, and that was just like a week or two ago. They're not done. They pass back and forth. They had an area where they lived full time, and they moved after the people did the logging. And I was going out once and I actually stopped and talked to these guys, and I didn't even think to ask about Bigfoot or if they saw anything strange in there, and they didn't bring it up. But they cleared a big area. There's a dirt road that goes into it, and I had permission to walk back there to look for footprints and never got around to it. But now that guy sold it, and there's a new guy there. And I did catch him on the road once to let him know, hey, there's Bigfoot out here. But they're no longer where they used to be, but they were there for so long that I would love to get back in there and look. I know there's going to still be stick structures. There's got to be.
Oh yeah, I'm
Or
sure
old
they're
dead
around
stone.
somewhere. What time of year did the encounter with the white Sasquatch happen? Do you remember if it was spring, summer, fall, winter?
It was the weekend before Halloween. Just this past one.
Yeah. And it was crouched down, correct? And then it stood up?
No, it thought it was hiding from me.
Okay.
That's all you could see is a pile of white. And I don't know if that was the head or its rear. It thought it was hiding, and it was just a pile of white on the ground. If it had been a brown one, I wouldn't have paid it any attention because it's where the field blends into the woods. But because it was white, it couldn't hide from me. And then when I started walking in its direction, when it stood up, it was like real fluid like. It was just really, it looked like the wind just grabbed a corner and was lifting it up until it was fully stood up. And then I realized, no, that's an animal. That's a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it seems like in the Ozarks, there's a lot of activity in the summertime going into the fall. And I mean, I've even heard reports in the winter, but that seems to be when there's the most activity. And a lot of people have speculated that in the fall, they're transitioning from like their summer behavior into the fall behavior, which could be like breeding season, similar to like deer in the rut.
Yes. And, oh, what kind of baby animal says mama?
I'm not too sure. I know like when fawns call out, it sounds like that, but not like, they're actually saying mama.
Well, I went up there one night in the dark to make a phone call. And then in the field, something yelled out, mama. And it perfectly sounded like mama. Um, I think it was the time of year when there would have been fawns. So it could have been a deer that I heard.
Yeah, it could be. It sounds like these creatures were living around the forest around your house, and possibly they had some juveniles that they were raising. And it seems like they'll do that when they get pushed out of one area. They'll have their little ones on someone's property. And I don't know if that's like for training purposes, like they're teaching them how to avoid humans. I don't know what the point of that is. Or maybe they're trying to get like an easy meal. I'm not sure.
But now I'm glad that they're here because they don't scare me really. Um, but I would like to learn to interact with them. I'm on Facebook with a whole bunch of people who talk about their Bigfoots, and they have more activity than I do.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out myself. I mean, I've done wood knocking, calling, leaving food, sitting out in the woods, not bringing a camera or a firearm, and just letting them come to me. I go to areas where they've been sighted at in the past, and I don't know. I'm not going to say I've tried it all, but I've tried pretty much everything I can think of.
Do you live in the woods?
Yeah, I'm surrounded by forest here. It's like a dead end road, similar to your setup.
Um, then they already know that you're there. How long have you been there?
Pretty much my whole life.
Oh, they already know about you.
Yeah, I've
Um,
had experiences since I was a teenager until now.
I don't know what kind of advice to tell you. Oh, I had a big, not a big, real big, but a glass marble. It was about 8-inch diameter, and it's in the field. It's a small field. It's a yard behind the house, and it had disappeared. And I was heartbroken because I put it there for a memorial for somebody. And I stood at the end of the forest and I'm like, I want my rock back. And then the next day it was back.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
I've got conch shells and seashells out there. I'm building gardens back there. I'm trying to get a lot of flowers so that this can be a bee and a butterfly sanctuary.
hmm
Um, so I'm always trying to introduce new flowering plants all over the place. I've got dill and parsley right now, in case a swallowtail wants to lay their eggs. I had milkweed. The deer ate it and killed it. But yeah, they will not touch the seashells. But something had taken my rock, and you could see where in the ground where it had been taken from. And no, it came back. I asked them to bring it back, and it came back.
Yeah. So what do you think these Sasquatch creatures are? Where do you think they came from?
I have a lot of different theories, and they're all messed up. I don't believe in the UFO connection. I'm 26 years living on this place, and I've never seen a UFO, but I had neighbors who were watching one and really close to where I live, but I didn't see it. Um, I think that they're real beings. They are very intelligent. They won't let you see them unless they want you to see them. There are some people who surprise them and catch them walking across the road. Um, I just think that they're a real thing and they live in the woods. Um, they've been here since forever. They may have come over the Bering Strait when it was a land bridge. They live in that part of Russia, and a lot of Eastern Europe has them. Um, they're very widespread. Australia has their own version called the Yowie. In China, there's certain places you can go and hike, and there's signs that if you see one, you have to leave the area, and it's a huge fine for you to hurt them or interact with them. Other countries don't deny them. China or Canada doesn't deny them. Why do you think the United States denies their existence?
I think strictly for control, and they don't want us to know that there's more out there. I think it has a lot to do with like corporations and spiritual beliefs and the way they have manufactured and altered history and what they teach us in school. So I don't think they want to go back on all that. And I do. I believe it's all for control. And like you said, Russia and China, they're pretty open about the existence of Sasquatch. I don't know about Canada, but I mean, it's part of their culture up there. And same like if you go to like Washington, a lot of people are open minded about Sasquatch in Washington, and they have the totem poles there, similar to what you see like in Canada and Alaska.
And now the ones on the West Coast are really aggressive compared to the ones we have here.
Yeah.
I know that.
hmm
I never heard a horror story here. There was a hunter in Texas that was found ripped to pieces. And that's all they would say is he was killed and mauled by an animal, but we don't know which one.
Yeah. Those types of stories are everywhere. Even in the Ozarks, there was a girl that was hiking the Ozark Trail here in Missouri, and she got torn apart. It looked like she was attacked by a great white shark. I saw the damage from the photos from the hospital, and it was bad, like real bad. And the report just said attacked by an unknown animal, but it could have been a mountain lion. It's hard to say.
Mountain lions will peel your clothes off and then lick wherever you're bleeding. They lick your blood off. The bears here are like big raccoons. So I don't know. When did this happen?
I'm not sure. My buddy was showing me the report online, and they showed photos, and they had like a long description. But it was on the Ozark Trail. I'm sure you can look it up on the internet. Girl attacked on the Ozark Trail by an unknown animal. But yeah, I mean, these reports of Bigfoot hurting people, they stretch from like East Texas to Oklahoma all the way up to Alaska. But at the same time, there's a lot of areas where, you don't really hear these types of reports. When people encounter these creatures, they just go their own way. They'll interact with people. They'll leave them gifts. So it goes both ways. And I think that's just, I don't know. There's like a similarity between the Sasquatch and human beings. Like you have good people, but you also have bad people. And I think it's the same way with these creatures.
Yes, I agree. Now, the guy in Texas was hunting, so he may have shot at it and angered it, and that's why he got attacked. I never carry a gun. I've got one. I never use it. And when I'm walking the dog, I don't have my phone with me, so I don't have a camera with me.
Yeah. I heard that with the missing 411, that Arkansas is like the hot spot of missing people and has the most reports out of any other state in the like deep in the Ozarks. I don't know if it's Bigfoot. I don't think Dave Politis says it's Bigfoot, but he sure does talk about Bigfoot a lot, and he's at Bigfoot conventions. So I think that's what he's referring to. A lot of people say, FYI, he's not talking about Bigfoot. It's like, well, I don't know what he's talking about because he's talking about Bigfoot.
The area I'm in, since I've been here, there's never been a missing person.
Yeah. I mean, there's missing people reports around here, but like they end up finding people or they froze to death out in the woods. I don't know. They'll find their bodies later on next to like a highway. I don't know. It's like a bunch of strange cases where they got lost in the Mark Twain National Forest, and they'll find them off the side of the highway. Or there's a hunter in the Ozark Scenic Waterways or Riverways, whatever it's called, in southern Missouri. And I think you heard that one on David Politis, but he was out hunting, and this is a remote area of Missouri. And basically nobody could find him for like 2 days. It was like the middle of winter during deer season. And then the search party comes back, like all the state patrol and game wardens, and they find his rifle and his clothes laying right there where they parked their vehicles, where they first started searching. And it wasn't there before. And they ended up finding his body, and they said he froze from hypothermia, and it didn't make sense. They said he crossed the river looking for the buck that he shot, but it's like, why didn't he have his gun? Like, why did he leave his gun in the parking lot and go way into the woods across the river, like naked? Didn't make sense.
Now, if I ever get lost in the woods and it's going to get very cold at night, what I would do as soon as it started getting dark, I would make myself a big mound of leaves, and I would just crawl into that to wait the night out, to wait out the serious cold. There was 2 Bigfoot hunters out west that were found dead from hypothermia. And I'm wondering, why didn't they think to do that? Rotting leaves give off enough heat that it can keep you alive through the night.
Yeah, a lot of people say they weren't prepared, but I mean, if they were Bigfoot researchers, you'd think they'd have like a lighter or something, warm clothes, some type of gear to get them through the night.
Well, they weren't planning on getting lost.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does. Yeah, that's unfortunate, though. I'd hate to hear that about people, and you just never know. There's a lot of factors out there. I mean, from just the elements to bad people, doing something horrible to another person, to cryptid creatures, UFOs, portals. I don't know, just mental health in general, people getting lost and not knowing what to do. So there's a lot of variables, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What do you plan on doing in the future with the Sasquatch creatures that you've had on your property? Do you plan on interacting with them, camping out there, bringing researchers to the area? What are your thoughts about it?
I wouldn't mind if you came down here to do some camping. But the way the landline law is, I don't want strangers coming here with guns. I no longer let people hunt out here. The only people I let hunt in the past were the ones who I knew they knew how to use a gun and they kill it in one shot and get their deer. And they hunt for their freezer. They're not after trophies. I would love to have some Bigfoot researchers come out here and camp. I've got a good well, so there's plenty of water, but I'm not close to water. I'm not far from water, but you have to walk down a steep hill. And we had a squatcher who actually lived down there on the creek for a while. And I don't believe a lot of his stories. And when I would see this guy, he was always really drunk. I mean, in the middle of the afternoon, he would come out of the woods to get more beer and then go back in. But one thing he told me, and I don't agree with this, he said the female was really nasty, all covered with bloat ticks and missing hair. Now, gorillas and chimpanzees will groom themselves. Have you ever seen a chimpanzee looking through the fur of another one? And then they find something, and then what do? They pop it in their mouth and eat it. Mm-hmm. If you had ticks on your shoulder, you could easily reach them and pull them out. So I don't believe that part of it.
Unless there was like a sick one or something, maybe it lost a bunch of hair.
Well, it had lost the hair because it was covered with ticks. So I didn't believe him. And this would have been the same family group that has the white one. And he never mentioned anything about a white one. But this white one could be a young one and just wasn't born yet when he was out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't dismiss him. He was out there living in the woods, so he had to have experienced something. How could you not? But at the same time, he was drinking, so I don't blame you. Is he still out there?
I don't know. I knew his brother-in-law, and this was years ago when I worked at the store, and the store is now closed. We don't have a store here now.
What else have you heard from people in the community? Are there other eyesight encounters? I think you mentioned that you've talked to like 17 different people. Can you talk about some of those experiences that people shared with you?
Well, when I worked at the store, I would always talk about Bigfoot. I had Bigfoot posters up, and I was the neighborhood Bigfoot lady. There was this young guy who used to come in, and he was one that, I'd be like, well, keep your eyes peeled for Bigfoot. And he'd be like, yeah. And then one day he was getting ready to walk out when his knees buckled and he collapsed, but he caught the edge of the freezer to keep him from hitting the floor. And he just totally had a breakdown. And he had never told this to anybody. He said that he was driving and it crossed the road and he couldn't talk about it. And he was like a mess when he finally opened up and told me. And it's like it ruined his life. He couldn't tell his family. He couldn't tell anybody. But he saw it cross the road. Now, there's another guy who used to come in and sit, and he would tell me the same story over and over again. He never changed his story. It was always exact word for word. And he would talk and I wouldn't interrupt him, even though I had heard the story already. Him and a bunch of hunters were way back in the woods, and something started throwing small trees and rocks at them. And he won't tell me who the other people were, but they just turned around and left that area. And then he had the same thing happen to him in Louisiana when they were hunting. The same guy told me that somebody, and he wouldn't tell me the name, they were sitting in their truck at the side of the road, and the Bigfoot was sitting next to a fence, and there was a metal sign on the fence that was just attached at the top. So it was using its fingers to flip it up and let it fall back, and it would make a noise. And it wasn't aware that he was sitting there in his truck. And he watched it for quite some time. And then it stood up, and it was like a 4-foot barbed wire fence. It stepped across the fence, walked through the pasture, and it was full of cows. And the cows didn't even look at it or acknowledge it. And it just walked through the field and walked away. And then I met 2 different people in town who were out here hunting, and they were on the same road. 2 different people who didn't know each other, and it crossed the road in front of them. One, it leaped off the road into a tree and then leaped to the far side, and then he could hear it crashing through the woods. The other one said it just paused, it looked at him, and then it just disappeared into the woods. 2 different people, the same area. Let's see. Oh, my mind is blanking now. I've got them written down somewhere.
Oh, you're fine.
Without names. But yeah, they've been seen in this area. Oh, the one guy, they had a fire out in their yard, and then they were letting it die out, and they went to bed. He got up to go get a glass of water, and he looked out the window, and it was standing there over the dying fire like it was warming itself. So he went and woke his wife up, and she came and she saw it. And then they got the camera ready. But as soon as he opened the door, it was gone. There was another person who they had just moved here, and he saw a bear standing upright, pissing on a shrub next to his barn. But it was standing upright, and it had its back to him. And he just said it was a bear.
Yeah, that's incredible. You know, you got something going on in the area when you hear that many experiences from the locals. You've seen things yourself, and yeah, that's a hot spot for Sasquatch activity for sure.
Yes. And they're here somewhere. And I know where they're passing back and forth because I saw the white one there, and then that pile of yellow, whatever it was, wasn't there later when I went back. So I know where their trail is, where they're going back and forth.
Yeah, so you've seen the most activity on the east side of the property, so that's got to be where they're coming from, where they're living at, or where they're traveling through.
Yes, but I also heard them on the west side, and the one that screamed at me was to the west of me, not that far. The shed I was living in is still out there. And there was an old fence line that we pulled apart and got rid of. And one of the metal T-posts bent really bad.
Yeah.
But there's no sign that anything fell on it.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed here is that I've had the most experiences on a certain side of the property in a certain area, but I've also had experiences all around the land, and it just seems like these things spread out during the day. They're not all in the same place, and yeah, there's a lot of land in between them. So it seems like they probably have like a hive mind. They're able to know things without having to be really close by.
Well, I think the owl calls are them warning the others if they're like camped somewhere for the day, but not all of them are in the camp. Whenever they see me, I mean, they would call out every single day because I use my phone every day. And That's their way of telling all the others that, hey, she's out here on the road.
Yeah, it seems like they communicate with owl calls, wood knocks, rock clacking, and many other things. I mean, even like the machine sounds that you were talking about with the chainsaw. And I don't know if they're trying to get your attention or if that's just their way of communicating sometimes.
Well, if they want my attention, that's all they have to do is make themselves visible. But the white one, the way it was trying to hide, it would have pulled it off. It had been a brown one. And then when they called out to me, you couldn't see anything, but they were there. They were close. I'm talking like within 50 feet on either side of the road.
Yeah. Your dog made a wise choice to sit down or stay where he was rather than barking and chasing.
Well, what he did both times, he just lowered his head and just stood there. He was like faced away from it. Ellie turned and ran back to me. As soon as it started to move, and I'm like, Ellie, she just turned and came back to me. And that's not normal behavior. And also, a few days before all that happened, when I'd walk, for some reason, Ellie stayed at my feet. And I did not know why. She is a bad dog. She loves to run away from me and chase stuff. And she doesn't have good recall. So that was another indication she knew something was out there. And she will run up to any stranger and beg to be picked up, and she likes to lick people. So I was scared. If I did call out and this thing answered me, Ellie would be like, oh, a friend, and run up to it. And then what would I do? But she didn't do that. If I leave her in the house and make her stay behind when me and Bowie walk, then if I do that a few times, and then when we walk, then she knows to stay with me. And if I call her, she'll stop running. But she has like chased stuff into the woods and disappeared, and that because of her size, that really scares me. But if she were to scream, that's all I have to do is turn Bowie loose and let Bowie go to her.
Yeah. Most likely there's a major waterway within 10 miles from your home, and the creek that's close to your house pours into that waterway, and that's probably where they're coming from.
When you stop recording, I'll tell you how close I am to, I'll tell you exactly where I am, and you can look for it on Google Earth. But I don't want to invite every random stranger out here to look for them. Oh, and I've told all the people who know me that if I stop talking about Bigfoot, if I start denying them, it means that I've made contact and I don't want them messed with. I don't want them interfered with.
Yeah, that's understandable. You've already gotten pretty close to that, so that's the next step.
Oh, I feed animals off my porch. I wait for them to show up, and then I put the food out because I don't want bears. I've had bears here, but I've had wild raccoons come and take food out of my hands. And right now I've got a possum that comes every night for a handout.
Yeah, that's amazing. How long ago was the encounter with the white Sasquatch?
It was the weekend before Halloween. It was the Saturday before Halloween. So I think a week.
In 2024?
Yes, just this past October.
Oh, wow.
And
so
I couldn't
that's fairly
talk
recent.
about it. And I couldn't talk about it for several days until I heard them in the woods, had his house knocked on. He was sleeping and something knocked on his window. And the dog started barking. So he thought that it was me or another neighbor in distress trying to wake him up. So he put the dog out the front door, walked through the garage and opened the garage, and there was the dog coming inside. Now, this dog will not tolerate a human in the yard. It barks at me, and I always have dog cookies in my pocket. The dog will take the cookie, chew it up, soon as it's done, it starts barking at me again. So whatever knocked on his window, the dog went around the house and came right back in and did not bark at anything.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a human.
That's unusual activity for that dog.
And around the same time, there was one night off in the distance. I thought it was coming from the west. The neighbor says it was coming from my way. There was a semi-automatic rifle, and it did a round, paused, did another round. And then there was a long pause, and then the third round was a completely different gun. And I don't know guns enough to know what it was. And it was about 1:30 at night. Now, when you live out in the woods in the country on weekends, you have a barbecue, your friends come over, you do target practice. So it's normal to hear a lot of gunfire sometimes coming from different areas. This was a 1:30 at night. And then later on, about half an hour later, was when his house got knocked on. And it was like a day after. I had the front door open because I like fresh air. I'm claustrophobic. And all of a sudden I smelled something really, really bad. And the dog didn't react at first. I didn't have Ellie yet. I've only had her 4 years. It smelled nasty the way skunk smells. But when you get that skunk smell in your yard, it's there for a week. This was completely gone within a half an hour. And then as I was trying to close the door, that's when Bowie started barking. But I just went ahead and closed the door. I don't know what was out there or whatever. I smelled it. I described it to somebody as being burnt poo or dirty bog. But it was nasty the way skunk was, but it was not a skunk. And I've been up close to bears several times, and I've never had a bear smell like that.
Yeah. And before these eyesight encounters, did you notice logging taking place nearby? I know you mentioned logging earlier in the podcast.
Well, they logged that area just to clear the spot for the guy who owns the place now. The first guy was going to build out here. I don't know him very well, but he sold it to somebody else, and he's just keeping it for like a camping spot. But there was a lot of logging going on my road, but that was before I started doing my research. And I didn't realize that the owl calls were not owls. I didn't know about that. That was way back. So that the first set of logging went all the way up and down the main road. And then it was the second part when they were just clearing the spot for the guy where the Bigfoots that were living out there moved. And now I have the internet. I'm only out there when I'm walking the dog. So.
Yeah. Did you ever hear, like any thumps on the ground, like something like ground stomping? Did you ever hear that when you'd walk outside?
Not when I walk outside. Oh, I did see a deer jump over a log, but its rear foot caught the log as it was going over, and it made a nice thunk sound. So that's when you hear stuff in the woods. I did watch a deer make a thunk sound.
Yeah, they will. They'll stomp the ground.
And then there was one night I was in bed, and something big, heavy, and it sounded like a 2-footer went running across the front of my house. And I was in bed, so whatever, and it was so fast, and I don't think I had the front light on, so I never got to see what it was. I just heard it. and it was heavy, and it went thumping by.
Yeah. Did they ever leave you like feathers, mushrooms, a rabbit with its head missing? Did you ever find like rock piles on your porch, anything like that?
Rocks. I'm so glad you brought that up. In the woods behind my house, I go and I pick up kindling wood. So I'm always out there. And every now and then there'd be a rock, a nice sized rock. And you'd pick it up and there's fresh leaves underneath it. And then I would walk circles, big circles, and you can never find the spot where it got pulled out of the ground. And I would find them on a regular basis, just out there in the woods. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's definitely strange, and rocks don't move on their own. And the first person to ever show me that was a farmer that was just north of Arkansas in Missouri, and we call the place the Killing Fields. But he showed that to me the first time I went out there, and I didn't really think too much of it. And later on, another group from northern or southern Missouri, northern Arkansas showed me that, and they're the SEMO Cryptid Bigfoot Research Organization, whatever you want to call it. And it really started to click because they'd lift up these big rocks and you'd find fresh green grass underneath. And it wasn't just in yards or fields. You'd go deep in the woods and find it as well.
When I was driving in one night, I was almost to my property line and a big rock hit my truck. And everybody I mentioned it to said, "Oh, your tires kicked it up." No, it was big rock. I can barely get one hand around it. And when a rock gets pulled out of the road, you can find the spot where it was living before it got pulled out. And there was nothing. This rock just was, I went back and it was sitting there in the road, and there was nowhere that it had gotten pulled out. So something out there threw a rock at me.
Yeah.
At my truck.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot before. So you're not the only one. And that's kind of scary. I don't know if they're trying to get your attention, if they're trying to hurt you, or if they just threw a rock and it happened to hit your vehicle.
Well, if they wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't be here. They've had plenty of times to hurt me, and I actually feel kind of safe. We recently had that Ozark devil guy missing out, and nobody knew where he was. And it made it kind of nervous to just be out there in the woods with no protection. But I knew if I go out in the woods and I get hurt by something and I'm screaming bloody murder, I'm sure that the Bigfoots would come and check it out.
Yeah, but they very well could. Okay. Well, yeah, I think you definitely have had a lot of activity on your property. You know, without a doubt, that these are Sasquatch creatures that have been roaming around your property, and they're out there for sure. And it hasn't been that long, so you know they're still around.
Oh yeah, I know they're here. It's starting to get hot here now, so I think they're down on the creek. And don't forget, I want to tell you something privately. Well, when we stop recording, yeah, they're here. They live here. They live somewhere close to my house, and they've been here. So,
absolutely, you'll just have to keep an eye out. Definitely pay attention to your dogs, the signs from wildlife around you, and anything that looks out of place. But yeah, Denise, you did an excellent job today, and I really appreciate you for taking the time to log down this report on the channel, and it really means a lot to me, and I believe you. I mean, everything you've explained sounds like genuine Bigfoot activity, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Denise has certainly had some intense Bigfoot encounters on her property, and it really makes me wonder why these creatures come so close to human civilization. Now, Denise did show me her property behind the scenes, and she is surrounded by huge woods, and she's brave to live out there alone. I can't imagine what she felt like when she laid eyes on these creatures and knowing that they were out there. I bet it was hard to go outside and actually enjoy nature. Also, she's validated her encounters with the locals. A lot of people in the area have seen things that they cannot explain, and these Sasquatch creatures are certainly out there in the Ozarks roaming around, and it makes me wonder what they're up to. Like, why do they come so close to people's properties? I can't wrap my mind around that, because I've experienced that myself. You would think that these creatures would want to be extremely elusive in the most remote forests, but that's not how it works. Now, there's no doubt these things are coming from the remote woods, but why they come so close to people really gets my gears turning, because they obviously want something. There's something that they're in search of. If you enjoyed this interview with Denise from Arkansas, don't forget to subscribe to Sasquatch Theory for more eyewitness accounts and real investigations into the unknown. If you have had your own Bigfoot or cryptid encounter and you would like to share your story on the podcast, feel free to get in touch with me sometime. Thank you all for listening and supporting the channel. Your belief and curiosity keep the search alive. Until the next time, keep your eyes on the forest, because something might be watching you.